As you know, my name is Kyneton the Genius, and today I'm going to show you how to store data in MySQL, build an application in Java, and store the data in MySQL database. Now we are going to use a number of applications. We are going to be using SQL command line, but if you are not comfortable with SQL command line, no problem. We'll use MySQL Workbench, which is a GUI application for creating databases in MySQL. We are going to be using also SpringBoot, Spring Tool Suite, as you can see. Actually, I created this application and I want to show you how to do exactly the same thing from beginning to end. And this is very important because storing data in MySQL is something you should learn how to do. And interestingly, the database object, the table, will be created for us automatically once we define the object at this point. So let me just show you the one I created. So this is a student class. It contains student information. We have CGPA, reg number, name, major. Then we have a number of things, but we have this query to initialize and insert data into the database. We have this query we written in Spring, not SQL, not in SQL, but it's SQL language we use to insert data. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to close this, what I already created, the student, MS student, is student microservice, I call it. And we are going to work with teacher microservice. Now this teacher microservice is empty, nothing is inside. I have not written anything. So we are going to start from the scratch. So for now, let me just close everything that is open and I'm going to show you everything from the scratch. All right, so let's stop this from running. Let's stop it and let's clear the console as well. All right, so we are starting on a clean slate now. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is to create the database, and to create the database is just a simple step: create database. Let's call this database teachers DB. Now I'm going to show you how to do this in command line. This is command line, but let me open it in programs. Hopefully you've installed MySQL. You also have Spring Tool Suite installed. These two applications, you need to have it installed. If you install MySQL Server, then you have MySQL Workbench available to you as well. Well, while I open MySQL command line, I'd like to remind you to subscribe to my channel by clicking on the subscribe button below this video. If you subscribe, then you get updates when I make new lessons, and also you kind of motivate me to keep making these lessons. So along the line, we are going to be learning something about dependency injection. We are going to be learning about repositories. We are going to learn about business service, and we are going to learn about controller and how to do URL mappings using annotation, as well as Spring Data JPA and stuff like that. So let's start by creating the database in MySQL. So if you install MySQL, if you scroll down and see MySQL here, so if you go to MySQL command line here, you can see MySQL command line. It opens up in this way, and you can just enter the password you use to configure MySQL, and then you have MySQL open. So if you say show databases, it shows all the databases that we have in the system. Now let's just create a new one we call teacher DB. We call it teacher DB. Just say create database teacher DB. That's all. That's all you need to do. And at this point, I can just put this away. But if you want to do this in Workbench, in GUI, you just come to GUI. Initially, when you open Workbench, you see it this way. So we go here, local instance. You log in as well. And then when you log in, it comes here. Normally, it comes in this place and it says schema. So you can right click and just create schema. So in Workbench, database is called schema. So you create a new schema and just give it a name. That's all you need to do. Okay, so you don't need to create any table. The table will be created automatically for you. Okay, so this is the teacher DB. We created this in the command line, as you can see. These are the database in command line, and this is the databases, same databases in Workbench. All right, so we've created the database. Now let's go to Spring. We are going to now create a class to hold the teacher object or the teacher record. So now this is a brand new a brand new Spring application. You just say file new and create a new application. That is what I've done. So going from there, I'm going to come to this place and just create a new class, and this is going to be teacher. Is going to represent a teacher object and holds teacher records when it is instantiated. So I'm going to call it teacher. Okay, so I'm going to put it in a package called models, because if you are creating classes that represent objects in the database, you'll need to put it by best practice into a package called models. So just attach the name of the package at this point and press enter, and it's going to be there. Also, before we proceed, we need to add certain dependencies. The dependency that will help us connect to MySQL database. This dependency includes Spring Data JPA and also MySQL connector. You need to add these two dependencies, Spring Data JPA and MySQL connector. So to add these dependencies, simply go to Maven repository. So let me just go to Maven repository and get these dependencies. To get to Maven repository, just go to Google, just type in mvnrepository.com or Maven repository, and it can come to this page. So the first thing we want to add MySQL. So it's going to give us connector that will help us connect to MySQL, and that is MySQL connector J. So click on it. I will want to use this 8.0.16. Click on it. Okay. So select it and then copy to clipboard, and then go back to your Spring application. Open the pom.xml and just paste it there in the dependencies section. So at this point, just paste it here in the dependencies section. Clean up a bit. Okay. So the next thing we want to add is Spring Data JPA. Spring Data JPA helps us do ORM, object relational. It gives us methods that can help us select, perform CRUD operation like select, insert, delete, and update. So it provides this method for us so that we don't have to be writing it ourselves. So let's go to the repository and get Spring Data JPA. So just call Spring Data JPA. So the one you should use is SpringBoot data JPA starter. So I would like to use release 2.1.6. Anyone is okay. So I'm going to click and copy it, and I'm going to also add it in my application. So at this point we are good to go. So hopefully everything should be fine. MySQL data JPA. Okay, so these are the two dependencies you need to add, and just go ahead to save. After that, you now create the application by completing this teacher model. The teacher model is just a teacher object. You want to specify the fields that should be available in the teacher object. So when you create this object here in your application, the table is going to be automatically created for you in the MySQL database. So what you do is to annotate this class with an entity annotation. This is what you should do, and press Ctrl-Shift-O on your keyboard. Meanwhile, you need to save first. Press Ctrl-Shift-O on your keyboard, and okay, you'll give a few seconds. Okay, so here, click Finish. All right. So why do we have this error here? Okay, so I'm going to save again, so it should go. So I'm going to add some private member variable. A teacher should have an ID, so private integer ID. A teacher should have a name, private integer name, and a teacher should have a title, so private integer title, maybe a professor, or a doctor, or something like that. So let's keep it simple by having only 3 fields in there. So we also need to tell Spring Data JPA or Hibernate. Now I don't want to confuse you, but you need to just add a notation here at ID to show that this is the primary key of the table that we are working with. Control Shift O on the keyboard. It comes from Java Access Persistence, and just add it. Now we need to add constructors to this class. So to add constructor, you simply right click and choose source and add generate constructor, source, generate constructors using field, and just say generate. It's as easy as that. So give some space here. Also, it's good to have an empty constructor. So just say public teacher and empty constructor, and like this. So this empty constructor, let's just correct this typo here. And let's generate getters and setters, very important. So go to source, right click, source, generate getters and setters, and select everything and generate. Now we have finished creating our model. So now the next thing we want to do is to tell Spring that we have a database and we need to create the database configuration. So the database configuration is actually a set of strings or that helps you connect to the database and be able to create this database. Now I'm going to go to the application I already worked with before, and I'm going to copy this string because sometimes it can be a bit confusing. So I'm going to copy it from here. So if you look at the description box of this video, you can see a link to my website. You can see this configuration. So go to SRC main resources and go to application properties and just paste it. Now we need to change up things a bit. Now if you look at the school DB, you can see that this is not the database that we want to work with. The database should be teacher DB, right? This is teacher DB. Now server time zone is UTC. You need to add it so that it could recognize the time zone. Sometimes you may get away with it. Now Hibernate DDL auto create means that anytime we run this code, it will create a new application. So initialization, when we want to insert new data into the database, like the initial data, it has to be always. So anytime we run this code, it's going to reinitialize, like insert new set of data into the database. Again, this is the username and password here, root. This is a driver, and this is our database connection string, and these two I just explained to you. Now this is fine. I'm going to save and I'm going to close this configuration. We want to be able to get a list of students, a list of teachers from a URL. That is when we go to the browser and type /teacherapp/teachers, it gives us a list of all the teachers in the system. So to do that, we need to add a repository. A repository is an interface that helps connect to the database and pull out some data for us and give us methods to be able to select, insert, update, and delete without having to write any code at all. So I'm going to just come here and just create a new class. I want to put it in another folder called repositories. And now a repository has to be an interface. So let's not make this mistake. I'm going to right click and say new is going to be an interface. Anytime you are creating a repository, it's going to be an interface, and it's going to be teacher repository. Okay, so I want to place this into the repositories package. So just say the repositories. So I'm actually creating a new package at this by adding this .repositories at the end. And now I want to specify the interface that is implemented by this interface we are creating. So the interface we want to implement is CRUD repository. So just say CRUD repository, and you can see, and say OK and say finish. Now, when you create a CRUD repository, then you need to specify what class represents the record for the database. What class represents the database table? And the class that represents the database table is called teacher. And now, what is the primary key type of this class? The primary key type of this class is integer, right? Is integer. And the final thing we do, we need to add repository annotation to this class. So just say add repository. Perfect. So I'm going to just say Control Shift O on my keyboard and everything is fine. Okay. Now this repository contains methods that has already been defined and implemented. So let me show you. The next thing to do is to add a service, a service layer. So basically, for you to get into the repository to get this data, because repository connects to the database, you need a service layer. It's best practice. You can go without it, but it's necessary. So I'm going to create also teacher service. So you see how we do it? We create teacher repository and we create teacher service. So I'm going to say new class. But the teacher service is going to be a class this time, and is going to be placed into the services package. So I'm going to create a new package called services. Okay, that's fine. And finally, I'm going to just say finish. Hopefully there is no typo here. Finish. And this class is going to be annotated with @service annotation, @service annotation. So now, since the service is going to talk to the repository, we are going to bring in the repository into the service. We are going to auto-wire this repository into the service. So what we are saying is that when we have this repository as a repository, then we can auto-wire it into the service, meaning that we are making making it possible for us to get this object of the repository type without having to be creating new instances every time by ourselves. Because if we don't auto-wire it, it means we'll be saying new repository anytime we want to use it. So we just say to auto-wire it, you create a private member variable of the repository type. So private teacher repository teacher repository. So this is it. I need to create this private member variable and add auto-wired perfectly well, and add the necessary namespaces. Alright, so now we want to get data from the repository. Remember, the repository talks to the database and we want to get data from the repository. So we are going to ask the repository, give us the list of teachers. The repository is going to go to the database and say, MySQL, please give me the list of teachers they're asking of it, and it's going to hand it down to the service. So to do that, I'm going to just create a public method that returns the list of teachers. So public list of teachers, public list of teachers get teachers. So let's just call it get teachers, and it's one list of teachers. We are going to just say repository give us list of teachers. That's all. So I'm going to first take out all of this. Okay. I'm going to say return teacher repository. Now the teacher repository, we've not written any method inside, but you can see that there are a whole lot of methods right here. We have find, we have find by ID, we have delete, we have save. Somewhere we can see save. You can see here. Okay, but that is not what we are doing. We just want a list of features, so we can just use find all. Find all. So this is going to give us list of all the teachers in the database table we created, and we are going to cast this to list of features because the repository returns an iterable, which is list of items, but is an iterable and not list of teacher objects. After now the next thing for us to do is to now create a controller. Now a controller handles requests coming from the browser. So when a user types in the browser blah 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 /teachers, it's going to hit the controller. Now the controller handles URL requests coming from the browser, and the controller talks to the service. So the controller is asking for data from the service. So let's create this controller. Again, we are going to create the controller in, so just say controller is also a class. Everything is like in Java, everything is a class. So I'm going to call it teacher controller. So you see how it goes: teacher repository, teacher service, teacher controller. Okay, so a controller, as you may have guessed, should have an annotation called @REST controller. The reason is because when we are getting data on a browser, a controller should give list of objects in JSON format. So it returns this list of students, not that list of students, but converts it or serializes it to JSON and returns it to the web page or to the browser. So how do we get to this place? So when a user goes to the browser, what will he type to be able to get to this controller? If you want to get to this controller, you need to type /teacher_app. Of course, you can choose any name, but I want anybody coming to this application should go through http localhost /teacher_app. Okay, so I'm going to say request mapping to /teacher_app. So that's what I want users to type in the browser, and they come in here. Okay. Now, these controllers should also return list of students to a user in the browser who is list of teachers to a user in the browser who is asking for a list of teachers. So to do that, I'm going to just write a public method that returns list of teachers and hands it over to the controller all the way up to the browser or to the requesting user through a URL. So a public method that returns list of teachers. So I'm going to call it public list teacher get teachers. So I want to use the same name as I use in get teachers as I use in the service. So now remember that the list of teachers now comes from the controller, goes to the service, and the service is going to hand it down to the controller. Okay, so that means that for us to use the service or to beg the service to give us this list, we need to auto-wire the service into this place. So it's the same thing I explained when we auto-wire the repository into the service. So I'm into the service, and I'm going to say auto-wired. Remember, it's simply to auto-wire a class into another one. Create a private member variable of the class being auto-wired in this very class that is going to consume it. So I'm going to say private teacher service, teacher service. Okay, so you can see we did it. Private teacher service. No, so it's not a function, it's just like this. Okay, so everything seems to be okay. So at this point, we can now ask the teacher service to give us a list of teachers. So I'm going to say return teacher service dot get teachers. It's as simple as that. It's simple. So how does the user now get a list of teachers? If we type /teacher_app, it gets to this controller. But since there can be several functions inside this controller, to get to this very function, we need to use an annotation again. So I'm going to say this time I'm going to use get mapping. So get mapping to /teachers. So if you go to /teacher_app /teachers, you will come to this place. Okay, so everything is fine. At this point, I would like to save everything. I'll also like to kind of test this application. So now, instead of returning list of teachers, let me just return just a string. So return the tech pro. Okay. Again, for it to return a string, I'm going to change this to string. So let's test it to see if it works. It's going to return this string when we go to /teacher_app/teachers. So hopefully we are not missing out anything. At this point, I'm going to run this application. So right click on it and just say run as a SpringBoot app. So when it runs, we are going to go to the browser and go to /teacher_app/teachers and see if we can get this the string I put down there. So let's see. I'm going to go to http localhost port 8080/teacher_app/teachers. Let's see. So we have a problem. Localhost port 8080/teachers. So there's a typo in my teachers. Okay, so you can see it worked. So the Tech Pro is returned. So our controller is working. So let's go back to change it back, because what we eventually need is gonna be a list of teachers and not just a string. Let's return list of teachers. All right. So what next do we do at this point? We need to get this, let me stop it from running and save. We need to get this list of teachers from the database. First, how do we put in data into the database? How do we create the table in the database? How do we insert new items into the database? Well, it happens that the JPA repository provides us with a way to, actually it's Hibernate, which handles the ORM mapping between our classes and the object in the database, provides us a way to initialize data into the database using something called data.sql. So you write a few insert statements that will insert new data into the database into a file called data.sql and place that file called data.sql in the resources folder. And if you do that, when the system runs, it's going to put in those data into the database for you automatically. So I'm going to just come to resources and say new file, and the name is simply data.sql. So name it data.sql, and there we are going to write insert statement that actually inserts data into the teachers table in the database. Meanwhile, this teacher table is created automatically for you. Now we are going to close this because that is not, doesn't need to open here. All right, so now we have data.sql. I'm just going to open it, open with a text editor, and simply write an insert statement, insert into teacher values. So teacher ID, teacher name, let's say and what else? Teacher ID, okay, professor, don't know. And let's add a couple more others. Just copy these. All right, so of course we need to change these IDs to be unique because we can't have duplicate primary keys. All right, so maybe we can also change up things a bit. Okay, so okay, whatever is okay. Let's leave it this way. I'm going to save. Now I'm going to run this application. After running it, we will look into the database to see if this data has been inserted into the database. And if that works, then we try to access to in the browser to see if this data is accessible from the browser, and then we know that we are done. So I'm going to run this application, and hopefully we will not have any errors. Let's see. Okay, so I think the problem is coming from somewhere here. Let's see. So it says blah 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 blah. So it says nested exception, Saffron Lawrence. Oh, incorrect integer value for column 1. Okay, so let's go to this point. Let me say use show tables. Okay, we have teacher. It created this table for us. So now let's say describe teacher. So we have ID, name, and title. Okay, that is fine. ID, name, and title, and it's telling us incorrect integer value. Why incorrect integer value? Saffron Lawrence, column 1. So I think everything should be fine. Oh, okay, so we have insert into teacher values. So it's not value, but values. So typos can be a problem for programmers, but debugging skills is the key. So I'm going to save, and then I'm going to relaunch this application again. Let's see what we have. Okay, so error is always there. I don't know. So let's see where we are having the error again this time. Incorrect insert into teacher values. For column name. So is name integer? Let's see. So let's go back to the model to check. So we have, oh, we have, this is not happening. So this is going to be string. So the name is going to be string, and the title is going to be string as well. So let me just replace all the places we have string name. It's going to be string name, string title. This is going to be also string, and this is going to be also string. This title is going to be string. All right, so title here is going to be string as well. Okay, so this is where the error is coming from. I'm going to save it, and I'm going to relaunch this application again. Hopefully, all the errors will be gone by now, and we should be able to test the application. Okay, so Tomcat started, as you can see. Tomcat started potato. First, I would like to go to here, and I'm going to say select star from teacher. Let's see. So you can see that all the data were inserted into. Okay, I enlarge it so that you can see. All the data was inserted into the database, as you can see right here. Let's try to do the same thing from the browser. So here I'm going to refresh this page to see what happens. So again, you can see that we're able to get the list of items as well from here, right? So this is how to store data in a database from Java Spring application. If you have challenges, let me know in the comment box below this video. And also feel free to subscribe to my channel by clicking on the subscribe button below this video so that I know that you are with me and I be motivated to do more. And also, if the video has been informative for you, please like it and also share it around. I remain kind on the genius, and I'll meet with you again in the next class.